Over 2,300 Americans have been killed in Afghanistan, many more wounded. The war has cost American taxpayers over $700 billion, over $100 billion of that in reconstruction aid. So what can you get for $100 billion these days? According to Nasir Shansab, not much. He's an Afghan entrepreneur and was one of the leading industrialists of the country. Though he left Afghanistan for the U.S. many years ago, he's remained involved there and has some pretty strong views on what should happen in his home country. Nasir Shansab joins me in the studio to talk about U.S.-Afghan relations. Nasir, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So you said in a speech recently that Afghanistan is the same failed state that it was in 2001. Have we not made any progress there?
Well, we did make some progress, no doubt about it. For example, schools have opened. Girls can go to school. Women can walk alone the roads of Kabul and other cities. They can go and work. They can go to the government. They can be involved in politics. Some roads have been built. Some bridges have been repaired. So yes, there has been some progress. But you just spoke of $700 billion spent in Afghanistan. And when you take that figure into consideration, then I think not much has been done.
So the U.S. Senator Bob Casey said that important progress has been made in Afghanistan. He points to this. He said, women make up 1/3 of registered voters. Life expectancy has risen from 45 to 62 years, and 8.3 million children are in school. Maybe about 40% of that girls. Do you think that that progress is permanent?
I wonder where all those numbers come from. As far as I know, there's not much of statistics available in Afghanistan. A lot of schools do not have buildings. A lot of schools do not have the material to teach children. A lot of those schools do not have teachers. Or at least capable teachers and also as far as life expectancy is concerned, I would doubt those figures very strongly. It is being said that 60% of Afghans have access to medical support, medical services. I can't believe that figure. 80% of Afghans live in the countryside, and almost nothing has been done in the countryside.
Do you think it was a mistake for the U.S. to invade Afghanistan in 2001?
I think it was a mistake for the United States not to engage the Taliban before 9/11 happened. I was at that time of the opinion that we should go in, give the Taliban the security that nobody wants to destroy them, and see whether we could work with them and make them evolve from within.
But this is while they were harboring Al-Qaeda.
I'm not sure whether initially they were harboring Al-Qaeda.
So you're saying before, at the very beginning?
Yes, before, at the very beginning. Ultimately, they became very paranoid. They thought that the world, and especially the United States, would want to get rid of them. And they did what they did. They let Al-Qaeda came and basically take over Afghanistan almost completely and did what they did. And when 9/11 happened, of course, I believe there was no choice but to go into Afghanistan militarily.
So who do you blame for the lack of progress or the lack of permanence in progress in Afghanistan?
Both Mr. Karzai's government as well as the United States. I think what the United States did initially, we aligned ourselves with the worst elements of Afghan society, which was the warlords and the drug kingpins.
Was there anybody else to align with, though?
Well, I think if they had looked around a little bit more carefully, I guess yes. And of course the advice that the United States government got was also bad. At that time, Mr. Khalilzad, an Afghan American, he was very close to the government, and I don't think he did the right thing. He was, I think, one of the people involved in trying to push the Karzais and some of their friends into high positions, and I think that was wrong.
What about the Obama administration? Can you tell me particular failures or missteps that the Obama administration did?
I think in 2009, it was quite clear that the government was very corrupt, that the police was very corrupt, that we couldn't do anything in helping Afghanistan with the people in power. And I think that at that time, the United States could have tried to bring in new people and a new government into Afghanistan, and we didn't do it. We didn't do it because I think Washington was afraid. Washington was always afraid of additional problems in Afghanistan. They didn't want to rock the boat, and that's what we have today. And today we have a complete failure of American policy in Afghanistan, in my view.
We're discussing U.S.-Afghan relations and U.S. policy towards that country with Nasir Shansab. He's an Afghan-American entrepreneur. He's also an author. He's written a novel called Silent Trees. What do you think of Hamid Karzai?
I think he's a very corrupt person. He is inefficient. He does not believe in democracy. He does not believe in institutional power. He believes in personal power, and he has used personal power to enrich his family and his friends.
Was there a better choice?
Well,
because it seemed that, we kind of backed Hamid Karzai because he was the only one available to us. Not because he was maybe the best choice.
I think that he was a friend of, and his older brother was a friend of Mr. Khalilzad, and Mr. Khalilzad and his friends went to Bonn, and it was a very controlled affair. They brought in some 70 people that they knew and they could control, and they produced what they produced, which was the Karzai government. And I think it was a mistake.
What about you? Have you thought about running for political office in Afghanistan?
I haven't thought about running for political office in Afghanistan. I really don't think that you can have a proper election. I, for example, think that the coming election in a few weeks, is going to be a fake election. As long as you have the people who are in power in Afghanistan, I don't believe you can do anything whatsoever. They are the product of chaos. They have thrived in chaos, and they don't believe in a rule of law, and they don't believe in democracy. But
you can't throw them all out, can you?
I almost think you would have to if you want to do something proper in Afghanistan. There are just a few people, few leaders. They have an enormously bad background. Most of them were criminally engaged in Afghanistan at various times. And I think the world is big enough and should be powerful enough and courageous enough to do it, but the courage is failing.
You do go back to Afghanistan quite a bit.
I do, yes.
How are you received there? Are you taken as, one of the sons, the leading men of Afghanistan, or are you kind of an outsider, a guy that left?
I think I'm being many people who are in power, I do believe they fairly dislike me, and rightly so. But I'm not sure how they look at me. Some people look at me in a good way, and some people don't. Depends on the way you look at what happened in Afghanistan and what I have said and written about it.
So tell us about why you left, when you left, and why.
I left in 1975. It was a fairly sudden thing that happened. I was invited to a dinner party, and there were foreigners and Afghans. For example, the Russian ambassador with his interpreters, and somebody. And just those few days, we had quite a number of executions. I mean, the Afghan government executed quite a number of people.
For what? And
well, it's a fairly easy thing. You just say these are national. What do you call it? They are enemies of the state. And somebody raised the subject why so many people had been executed. And there was a very close relative of the Afghan president at that time. and he said the leader, he meant the president, President Dawood, the leader didn't know anything about it. If he had known about it, this would have not happened. And I, as stupid as I am, I said, well, damn the leader who accepts I don't remember what I said exactly, but the good things about the presidency, but not the responsibility. And
so you mouthed off, and you got essentially
And the next day
labeled a troublemaker.
At 11 o'clock, my door to my office was forcefully opened, and soldiers came in and lifted me with my chair from behind my desk and took me to the ministry for interrogations.
But you were able to leave nonetheless. You were not put in prison.
I was prosecuted, and I was accused of national treason. This is the word that I wanted to use before. And the judge, who knew that I had nothing to do with the whole thing, he invited me to his house and asked me to come very late when it's dark, and asked me to park my car somewhere else. And I went. And he actually told me that his wife even had cooked for me. He said that he would love to take some money from me so that I would be taken care of. He would let me go and he would be taken care of, but he couldn't. He said that the people upstairs are angry with you. And he said that he would judge me the next day and make his judgment, but he would give me time to leave the court as a free man. And he said, take care of yourself. And he did exactly that.
So he told you to get out of the country while you had the chance?
He told me to get out of the country, yes.
So you were abroad when Soviet troops rolled into Afghanistan. What did you do at that point?
I was working on a project for a Swiss bank while I was in Europe, lived in Europe. And I was in Pakistan for negotiations. They had a project there. And I was sitting at the international lounge at the Karachi airport when a group when I heard that an Aeroflot plane had landed. And then a few minutes later, I saw how the team that was flying that plane, the Russians, came in. And I felt a very strong sense of going and attacking them, but I didn't do it, and then I think I decided that I had to do something as a human being, which did not mean much in terms of Afghanistan, and I engaged myself then fairly regularly with the resistance. I tried to give advice where I could, including in Washington, and that's what I did. I went there for about a month every year through Pakistan to Afghanistan and spent time there.
My guest is Nasir Shansab. We're discussing U.S.-Afghan relations and U.S. policy towards that country. He's written a novel about Afghanistan called Silent Trees. You had a breakfast meeting with Osama bin Laden.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Since I was going every year to Pakistan, he had heard about it. And he was then in Pakistan, in Peshawar, had opened an office and was bringing in young Arabs from many Arab countries to join the fight against the Soviet Union. And he had told a mutual acquaintance that when I came the next time, I should try to contact him.
What did he want from you?
I have no
Funding,
idea.
maybe?
I have no idea. He was not wanting funding from me. He was a rich man, and he actually funded his own enterprises. So the next time I went, I had a phone number for him, and I called him, and we agreed to see the next day for breakfast at the Pearl Intercontinental in Peshawar. We had a breakfast, and that was the only meeting I had. I never pursued the contact because I had a bad feeling. I didn't feel good about this man.
Why? What did you?
He was very arrogant. He was very dismissive of Afghans. While he was there to help the Afghans, he was very dismissive of them. And he mistreated the Pakistani Pakistani server who served us breakfast. And I felt that was something that went against my grain. So,
all right. So the Mujahideen did, with the help of the Americans, defeat the Soviets. The Soviets pulled out. What did you do at that point?
I immediately contacted Washington and proposed that we should engage ourselves economically, that we should help the country, which was totally broken economically, to help it stand on its own feet. Of course, it was no longer, Afghanistan was no longer important because
we won that war. Forget that.
The Soviet Union had collapsed. Communism was not there anymore. So we just dropped it like a hot potato and went away from it.
And we know what happened next. So, Nasir, regardless of what happens as far as security agreements between the two countries, now when the U.S. and NATO pull out of Afghanistan, they will eventually pull out. What happens to Afghanistan?
I think there will be civil war. I think that the Taliban will take a major part of Afghanistan, especially the Pashtun belt, which is the south of Afghanistan from the west to the east. I think they will take Kabul. The minorities, Tajiks, Uzbeks, and Hazaras, I think they will go to the north, and there will be a civil war for a long time to come.
So we just rewind and go back and repeat history again.
We are going to repeat history again. That's at least my view.
So the Pentagon seems optimistic, though, about Afghan National Security Forces because their press secretary has said, this is in November of 2013, that the insurgency remains resilient, but, quote, Afghan security forces are now successfully providing security for their own people, fighting their own battles, and holding their own against the insurgency. What do you think of that? How are the Afghan security forces doing?
I think that assessment is too optimistic. I think that once NATO and the United States leave, psychologically, I think that the will to fight on will evaporate, and that many soldiers will actually desert and go back to the villages. And the reason is also that there is a certain amount of ethnicity involved in this, because about 70% of the Afghan army is from the north. And they are Tajiks mainly and Hazaras. And the fighting is all in the south, where the Pashtuns live. So they are actually considered to a certain extent foreigners themselves, and most of them don't speak actually Pashto. Educated people speak both languages, but they come from the villages, and they don't know Pashto. And I think they will just go. I mean, the rate at which soldiers leave already is 4% a month. That's about 48% is half. The army has to be replenished because every year half of it leaves.
I want to ask you about opium production. It's increased since 2001, and aside from that being bad for the world, having those kind of addictive drugs flooding the market, why is it bad for Afghanistan? Increased is a minor judgment in my view. In 2001, when the United States invaded Afghanistan, the country produced 200 tons of opium. Today, it produces almost 9,000 tons. So it's why the increase?
I can't explain it. I think nobody cared. And in terms of danger to the country, it has criminalized business there. And it's going to criminalize life there. It will be a terrible situation for the society in general.
Nasir Shansab is in the studio with me. He's an Afghan-American entrepreneur. He's also written a novel called Silent Trees. You're a businessman. Why are you writing a novel?
I always liked writing. I always wanted to write. But then life was such that I didn't have the time for it. I actually wrote a novel while I was in Afghanistan. And when I fled Afghanistan, everything remained behind, so it's lost. I did write a piece of analysis in the 1980s about Afghanistan and Soviet expansion in the Third World. This is a story I thought I'm trying to write about people who live in a dictatorship. I think it's a human story. It's not just an Afghan story. There are a lot of people, even today, who live and are controlled by dictators and live under dictatorships.
And this story is set in 1978, so just before the Soviet invasion.
The main part of it.
Why at that point in history?
I had to start somewhere, and I thought that since there was a break in the history of Afghanistan, because the communists took over, and then civil war started, and Afghanistan basically got destroyed. I thought maybe that was a point to start it.
One of the characters in the novel is an Afghan who left for the U.S. and is very conflicted about staying in the U.S. or returning to Afghanistan. Did you have those feelings?
No, I didn't, actually. I have a feeling that wherever I go, if I feel comfortable there, it's my home. I feel I really don't believe that I belong to any single country. I think that I'm just a citizen of Earth in a sense. I feel comfortable here because I'm a free man. Because my children have had security and grew up in a secure surrounding, and I think that we have a certain amount of security in the future, hopefully. So I'm very comfortable, and I love my life here, and I never look back.
What do you want your Western audience to take from this book about Afghanistan? What do you want us to learn about?
I think we have to be two things I would like to achieve with that, if I can. One is that we should be on guard, that everything in life is very fragile, and that anything can happen anywhere, and that the freedoms we have, we should cherish, but we also should on guard for it, because it could not take it for granted, and I assume that we do. The second thing that I think I would like people to take from this is that the third world is a major part of life in this world, and we are the world is getting smaller. We all belong together, and if there is trouble and hunger and oppression in one corner of the earth, we will never be really safe in the other corner of the world. So we have to take care of everybody, and we have to accept that we all are together here on this little globe of ours.
Let's talk about solutions, because some people might say you're very overly pessimistic about the
Yes.
prognosis for Afghanistan.
Yes.
What do you want to see the administration do with respect to Afghanistan?
I have a very firm idea, but I know it's not doable because Washington is not going for it. I think what we have to do is we have to abolish the government that is in Afghanistan. We have to declare Afghanistan a country that cannot be ruled by itself, and introduce an interim government.
But that's very anti-democratic. I mean, for us to go in and say, all these people, we're annulling your government for you.
I would do it with the international community, maybe with the help of the United Nations, and put in place a government, a non-political government, and give it maybe 3 years, 2 years, 3 years to clean up the system, to reintroduce democracy, to rebuild the institutions, and then have a fair elections and let it go. Hopefully, Afghanistan will become a peaceful country and a peaceful member of the international society. But whatever we do with the present political setup in Afghanistan will lead to nowhere because the people don't want it. I mean, the people in power don't want it.
Should we continue to pump more money into Afghanistan, given that so much of it is either misused or stolen?
If we don't want to go all the way as I described it, then I don't think we should even, because it's taxpayer money. It's money it's wasted, as most of it has been wasted so far.
Where's that money gone anyway?
Into the pockets of a few, into banks in Dubai and other countries, and real estate in Dubai and other countries.
Stolen, essentially.
Stolen, yes.
Is democracy possible in Afghanistan?
I think if we introduce it properly, and if you inform the people what democracy means, what their vote actually means for them, I think yes. India is a very poor country. The vast majority of Indians are illiterates, like Afghans are, and yet democracy has been very stable for 70 years in India. It works. We have to explain it and to introduce it properly.
But not if the Taliban take over. Because it's not like they're a democratic institution.
When the Taliban take over, I think, I frankly think they will. And I think that we should go and work with them, frankly. Because we have to...
But can we really work with people like that?
Well, we have to try to change them from within. We have to... as long as we show people that we are not hostile to them, give them the security that the world is not against them, I think slowly and gradually you can change them.
But right now we're really losing that narrative, aren't we, with the Afghan people, that they do think that we're against them?
I think so, yes.
So are you going to write any more books?
I'm actually writing two at the same time. One is a piece of analysis, one is a piece of fiction, and I'm about in the middle of both, and I'm deciding which one to finish first. So yes, I will.
Nasir Shansab, he's an Afghan-American entrepreneur. His novel is called Silent Trees. Nasir, thanks so much for being on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.